Everybody, welcome to Planet FPL. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
And our world revolves around Fantasy Premier League. It's the end of game week 31 plus, and now we're heading into game week 32. Time for us to review the fixtures from this week, thick and fast coming at you. It's been a lot of football. I've not been able to watch some of the BT Sport games other than extended highlights, but some of the Sky games. Interesting results. A lot of teams failing to score. Liverpool crowned champions yesterday. Plenty to cover before game week 32, which is literally 24 hours, and then we're into deadline again. So thick and fast, James, thick and fast.
Yeah, there is going to be lots of that, I'm afraid. Interesting what you highlight there on the clean sheets. What was there? 9 of them. And it's a running theme, isn't it, in terms of lower goals. There's only 3 games this week that I think have an expectation of over 2.5 goals. And normally that will kind of be a 50-50 split. So, yeah, clean sheets are in, aren't they, mate?
They are. Big at the back is back, as a lot of people were saying. Not only that, you've then got bonus points, like Nick Pope picking up 3 for you yesterday. Trent obviously picked up a goal and bonus points and a clean sheet. Robertson with an assist. Defenders were picking up. Wan-Bissaka picked up an assist. So it's the clean sheets, but there are quite a few chipped in with some handy attacking returns as well.
Yeah, as you already mentioned, I mean, all 3 are big Liverpool big hitters, right, with an attacking return. That's big. Then you've got Wan-Bissaka on that as well.
One of the players that we've talked
Michael
about.
Keane is obviously hugely owned at Everton.
One of the players that we have mentioned, and the jury I think is still out, but I think we have mentioned is Matt Ritchie. Picked up a couple of bonus points. He returned an 8-point after an 18-pointer, so that was pretty good. He's flagged as yellow, right? So he's got a knock at the moment. But
yeah, how did he get an 8-pointer when they conceded?
I'm sure I flagged.
He did get 2 bonus points. You're absolutely right.
Okay, maybe.
But did he go off early?
He may have done. I'm sure.
I think he did. Yeah. So he got the clean sheet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fluky as for cut, isn't it?
But you know what I mean. People have picked him for attacking returns or whatever. He's come in. So there were big defensive points to be had. And on the flip side, though, the forward lines for a lot of teams were bare bones, man. Other than Jimenez, where are the attacking returns? Like, Harry Kane, but his ownership is particularly low. But Aubameyang, nothing. Aguero out for the rest of the season. Jamie Vardy, that even both of our Clash the Correspondents guests gambled on, nothing. Danny Ings obviously had a tough fixture, but nothing. So the forward line's dead. Jesus, a lot of people had gone to instead of Aguero, benched. So it now feels like defense followed by midfield, and then attack is attack, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I wonder if a few people are now thinking of a strategy that includes Mason Greenwood and Eddie Nketiah. And literally we're going 5-4-1 or 4-5-1. I wonder if we get another very low scoring game week coming up, I think we know there's going to be quite a few wild cards, those who haven't already get activated in game week 33. I wonder if a lot of people take that route and go 5-4-1 or 4-5-1.
I mean, we've talked about our game weeks because we do some Patreon podcasts, which we'll talk about at the end. For anybody that doesn't already know, we do also record daily podcasts for our patrons, where you can find out more information. Patreon.com/FPL, quizzes and all that kind of stuff. However, we did a Patreon pod already today where we talked about our teams, but let's look at it for our regular pod as well. How was your game week overall, and were you happy with it?
Yeah, I have to be happy with hitting the green arrow. Nothing was going to hit the heights as it did for me with the previous game week. But yeah, wildcarded into 75 points. I mean, average was 62 overall. I think average in the top 10K was in the 80s, I think. So really high scoring week in spite of the lack of forwards that returned, right? Which I think shows how many people have already clocked on to games are going to be lower scoring. And in fairness, you're getting a few power midfielders who've been doing all right, haven't they? KDB scored again, Salah scored, Mane scored, etc. Son with an assist. So quite a few Martial hat-trick if people were on. Quite a few of the power midfielders have been doing all right still as well. And the defenders that the majority of people have gone to, even like what you said there, I'd not even realised Matt Ritchie did, 8-pointer, because he's obviously come off before Villa scored. So I see a lot of teams with clean sweep of clean sheet points across the board this game week. I think this trend is going to continue, by the way. I think there will be a game week where Aubameyang, Kane, Jesus, and all them, they all score together, and we go, oh, do we need to change it again? I'm sure that'll flip at some point. But I think the trend in terms of lower scoring Premier League games, generally speaking, is going to continue. I don't think it's also a coincidence that the 3 games that I enjoyed the most this week, which admittedly one of them was my team win the Planet FPL Derby, were all 8 o'clock kickoffs. Were the most enjoyable games.
Bit cooler temperature.
I think it helps. I mean, it also helps that Liverpool, Manchester City, and Chelsea were 3 of the best teams in this league. Yeah. Arguably, you could say the 3 best teams actually. Were all playing during those periods as well. May well have helped, but it is something to keep an eye on. Like, I think Wolves on Saturday, it's a bit of a concern with the 12:30 kickoff and how warm it can be. You think Watford and Southampton Sunday afternoon. I mean, my goodness, it's going to be warm. These aren't going to be great watches.
No,
but we predicted that as well in terms of not even so much the temperature, but just football would not be the same. It's not the amount of clean sheets we're seeing and the lowering of overall goals isn't surprising me at all at the moment. You
had a plan to go to Sadio Mane free hitting next week. Original plan.
I mean, my original plan was going to be free hit 32 and wildcard 33. Of what I saw in game week 30, for me, I had to get off the Villa and Sheffield United crap and all that, which absolutely, I'm really happy that I made that decision. And not too many regrets with what I picked from a wildcard perspective either, actually. The only thing I probably wish is, rather than going Calvert-Lewin in hindsight, I wish I'd gone Mason Greenwood.
Even cheaper.
And just allowed me even more, because then I could go Son to Mane in one move, for example, if I wanted to.
Do you have a transfer planned for this week?
Yep. No transfer, rolling. I'm quite happy with my lot. I mean, I'm in a position now where this will shock people, but at the moment I'm leaving Danny Ings on the bench as first sub.
Your strategy was to give yourself benching headaches, so there you go. I don't think that's such a bad strategy, I'll be honest with you. I think it's not too bad at all.
I got Laporte as third sub at the moment, leaving Saka on the bench. Yep. This is going to be an ongoing problem for me week to week, and it's something I need to deal with and accept that it's probably going to happen. I got the choices right this week, leaving Alonso and Laporte on the bench. I did not need one of them returning a double pointer last night, especially when they both are differentials as well at the moment. That would have been a real blow. But yeah, it's a headache I'm happy to put up with. But then my thinking going into 33 is potentially to go, for example, something like Calvert-Lewin to Greenwood and then Danny Ings to Jesus. And because of the 1.4 million I've got spare, I can do that quite comfortably. And then, okay, I'm lowering one, and then Greenwood, I can make a match-to-match selection, whether I want to play him or not. I think he's a strong possibility. I think he's the one that really stood out for me on Wednesday night. I know, obviously, Martial stood out for obvious reasons. But Greenwood really caught my attention because he played well. He looks a threat. And I think he's a better option for United now than Daniel James. And with some of the weaker teams United have got left, he's going to get returns. He knows where that onion bag is.
He's very good, actually, Mason Greenwood. When he came on as a sub against your lot as well, I thought he had good impact on the game as well. So, it's interesting. And I think also from the games we've seen, before we get into my team and my wildcard dilemmas, from the games we've seen, there are teams that are going to start ruling themselves out of FPL for me. Teams that are sitting in deep, like we'll talk about it when we go through the games, but there's certain teams that are ruling themselves out as options for me. Quite a lot of people are going to end up with all-in strategies, which is what my wild card really looks like. All in on Wolves, all in on Manchester United, almost all in on Manchester City. The only reason it's not all in is that rotation headache. All in on Liverpool, and then one or two others. It really is like these are the guys that can keep the ball well, good footballing sides, and have the ability to be patient and break a team down. Guys that have to attack football and look for space and need to use pace at the moment, it's going to find it very, very difficult.
But then Chelsea utilised that great last night.
Yeah, and that was against Manchester City. The likelihood of teams being able to Manchester City is very low. Like, you need to be clinical and take your chances when you get them, which Chelsea did. Anyone outside of the top 6 or 7 in the table is going to not be able to play that way and be as clinical, in my opinion. Like, it takes a little bit of luck in terms of your conversion percentages on your chances for that to work. And Chelsea actually are an interesting one where they've won 2 from 2. They're cementing their top 4 spot here. And maybe there are a couple of assets in there. And one that did raise his head in my wildcard, actually. I ended the week on 79, which is decent. Claw back a few points, get back up there. And I didn't make any moves. I took back the team that I inherited from when football restarted, which had triple Liverpool, Robertson and Salah. And it had triple Wolves, Doherty, Traore and Jimenez. That gave me a good foundation, sprinkling KDB. Bob's your uncle as a decent scorer, 79. And I captained a player that returned in Jimenez as opposed to a lot of people on Fernandez that ended up a blank. So I'm happy with that. However, I do need to pull the trigger on my wildcard here because I'm missing out on Manchester United assets because I have none. And tidy up a little bit the riffraff around the edges of my squad. Rico, Charlie Taylor potentially as well. I'm not using my defensive when there are clean sheets to be had. I haven't yet pulled the trigger on my wild card. As every day's gone, I'm like, normal convention is pull the wild card early, play the market. There's been no crazy price fluctuations or price movements. And I've had, in the wild card team that I want to play, I've had 500,000 wiggle room in value. So I haven't actually played my wild card yet, but I've been playing around with it at the moment. Now, Ederson and Martinez are locked for me. Martinez is the best cheap option who's playing, and I've got a bench boost within the next 4 or 5 weeks. And Ederson just covers me off against rotation risks. Trent stays, Doherty stays. Originally, I bought in Aaron Wan-Bissaka. There wasn't much between Wan-Bissaka and Maguire, but basically you've got Maguire, so I'll go Wan-Bissaka.
I wish I'd gone Wan-Bissaka, by the way.
I just feel like most people are going Maguire, so I'll just be a little bit different. But I don't think there's much between them. I had Matt Ritchie, and then I had Jamal Lascelles because I thought Newcastle double defensive wasn't too bad a shout. Looking at it again, they go into City, which is going to be difficult. Then they've got West Ham. I'm not sure I'm convinced. So I went away from that. And we'll talk about my 4th defensive spot. Question mark. KDB stays. Traore stays. Bruno Fernandes comes in. Martial comes in. And Saka come in. Saka at 4.7 just is a no-brainer there.
Decent.
So my midfield writes itself almost there. I think Martial's still a good shout. I was going to pick him on my wild card before he hauled. So there is that temptation to think, am I going for him because he's hauled? But I was going to pick him before he did. So I think I'll stick with my logical decision-making on him. And then it leaves a question mark around my front line. So Jimenez stays. So I've got 1 defender and then 2 attackers. Ings was going to stay, but it's now a question mark. And originally, if I'd have gone with Jamal Lascelles, I would have brought in Jesus. If I don't keep Jesus and I downgrade him to Tammy Abraham or someone cheaper, Jay Rodriguez, I can keep Robertson at the back. And Robertson at the back is like really got my eyes going, James, where I'm like, I can't do this.
Oh, not owning him this week. You know my feelings on him. It's frightening.
If I keep Robertson, and if I keep Robertson, then it was a case of getting Jay Rodriguez and then Tammy Abraham ahead of Danny Ings. So my front line would be Jimenez, Abraham, and Jay Rodriguez. If I downgrade Jay Rodriguez to a Mason Greenwood, then that Tammy Abraham can go to Gabriel Jesus. So end up with a front to Jesus and Jimenez. But I don't want to do it before the Liverpool City game.
Your reception shit. I basically didn't hear anything you said over the last 20 seconds.
Well, I was just talking about whether or not...
The audio listeners will.
Yeah. It's just a case of whether or not Jesus, a front 3 of Jimenez, Jesus and Greenwood going really cheap, allows me to keep Robertson at the back. Or if I drop Robertson to a Lascelles, then I can have Jimenez, Jesus and Danny Ings. It's tricky here. This is my little conundrum.
Plenty
Jesus.
to ponder. So is your thoughts of launching this for 33? Is that your thinking at the moment?
No.
You can do it now?
Launch it now. Yeah, I think launch it now.
In spite of that City-Liverpool fixture?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it's Edison. Yeah, in spite of it.
Well, yeah, I think you'd play Martinez this week, would you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will end up doing that.
Yeah, and I'll probably... but that's the only defensive coverage is Edison. So watch Edison take a penalty.
Oh, imagine. No, I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, well, their season's completely finished, Manchester City. By the way, as a sum up now, I don't buy into the fears of Liverpool on rotation and all that. Yes, they've got a period between City and their game in game week 35 where they play every 3 days. And I think you need to make a game-by-game assessment on your Salahs and Manes and Trents. And I'm including Trent in this now, in terms of whether you feel comfortable enough that they'll start and captain them or not. Make that on a game-by-game basis. But I would imagine all of them will start at least 3 of those 4 games. And the one they don't start, they'll probably play the final half hour. I really wouldn't stress about it at all.
I'm not. I pretty much have to pull my wildcard, James. I can't go into another game week with 0 Manchester United coverage here.
All right, fair enough.
Especially it's Brighton away, right? So,
well, I was very set that I would captain Bruno Fernandes again this game week, and I've changed my mind. There's a couple of reasons why I've changed my mind. One was when I did my stream yesterday on YouTube, and I was talking about Brighton, and it just kind of sunk with me that this is a more difficult fixture for Manchester United than I originally felt it was on paper. I think Brighton are the sort of side that could give United some difficulties, actually. So I intend to revert back to Raul Jimenez now, which I don't like. I don't think Raul Jimenez should regularly be an FPL captain option. He's only scored more than once in 1 game this season. Mm-hmm. But offer me a guaranteed 8 or 9 pointer now and double that. And I feel like taking it in this game week because the FA Cup here is a huge, huge problem for anyone considering their captain this week. For those with weaker benches, it probably doesn't cause you benching headaches or anything, but captain choice is horrible. And it's particularly horrible, in my opinion, for Aubameyang owners because Aubameyang at home to Norwich, as shit as Arsenal have been recently, although they were better yesterday, Aubameyang against Norwich is the standout captaincy option. If you've still got him, this fixture is probably why you've still got him. However, they play Norwich 3 days after playing Sheffield United in the FA Cup, which is 3 days after he's played 90 minutes against Southampton. The FA Cup games can also go to extra time. Mm-hmm. I think that Aubameyang plays against Sheffield United at the weekend because I think if he doesn't play and they get beat, Gooners will go mental. Gooners they're more interested right now in trying to win that competition.
Agreed.
And if he ends up playing 120 minutes, he ain't starting against Norwich.
So they should be interested in winning the cup. I'd like to see them say, you know what? The season is done for the league. They're going to struggle to get back where they were. But they're not going to finish
top 4. Not a chance. They could still finish 6th, 7th, I think, potentially.
Yeah, it might not be enough for Europa, though, 7th, would it?
If one of the top 6 win the FA Cup, then 7th is enough.
Right. So we'll have to see what happens with that. And it's more than possible with City still in there and Chelsea still in there and stuff. So let's see what happens with that. It's a challenge with Arsenal. I thought Eddie Nketiah did well.
He's another great option. That's what I'm talking about. The idea of even going him and Greenwood and smashing out the rest of your team. No drawbacks. You know, you're going Doherty over Bolly, for example. You're going Robertson over Van Dijk. No cutbacks at all anywhere. That's what that potentially allows you. Allows you a real power midfield 5 as well. And I think a few might begin to lean that way. Like I said, if we have another game week like this. And Nketiah, is offering a great option. But then it's the same problem. If you've got him this week, say, and I'm the same with Saka. It's like on paper, against Norwich, I really want to play him. And I'm looking at Saka going, he's played all 3 games. Is he that integral to them that he then plays against Sheffield United again? At which point, surely he's got to get a break. When it's not even just a Wednesday game as well. So they go Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday. And then they play Wolves, which is obviously bloody tough, 3 days later again as well. So at some point here, and it's not to say we've kind of seen with Riyad Mahrez really shocking us last night. You and I thought he wouldn't start. Yeah. That people like Aubameyang, of course, can play all of these games. But with the way that, particularly, say, for Arsenal, their fixtures land, it makes sense to my eyes that Aubameyang doesn't start against Norwich. The other flip of it is, if they need him, he'll obviously play the last half, maybe even all the second half, and he can still do the damage in that period, by the way. Remember, obviously, we're seeing a lot more goals in second halves compared to first halves. I think a lot of people at the moment are going, what time does the second half start? Because that's how it feels with a lot of games. So if Aubameyang was going to play the second 45 minutes right now, you'd probably take that. And I think you would still consider captaining him.
Yeah.
So interesting. It could go either way.
Should we go run down some of these games from the week and what we could have, should have potentially learned? Leicester-Brighton was Tuesday 0-0.
And give us half hour on this.
I can summarise it.
Go back and listen to Clash of the Correspondents. You'll learn far more on that.
I am not going near Leicester. I don't see anything in Leicester that jumps out to me to want at all, even Vardy. He's been a great FPL servant. If normal football resumes next year, with crowds and all of that stuff, Jamie Vardy, I'll have a look at. But other than that, I wasn't impressed, and I didn't think James Maddison really has got the ability to step up and unlock defences. He wasn't good at all. Brighton have got some assets there that are good players, and you think, actually, you know what, I was impressed with, like Lamptey at right back. It was a tough game, like a physically tough game. He's a little guy, he's strong, but I thought he manned up and did really well. But I wouldn't pick him in FPL. Like Lewis Dunk had a decent game at the back. I wouldn't pick him in FPL because there's other assets that I would want to go for. Even Mopé, but I'd rather go to a Jay Rodriguez or a Mason Greenwood ready and catcher. So I feel like they've got players in there that are all doing okay, but I'm not going to bother with in FPL.
Firstly, on Leicester, and this will sound really weird talking about the team that's third in the league, I'm pretty sure they're completely off my radar for the rest of this season. He also, before we recorded with Aaron for Clash of the Correspondents, Aaron Lago, I said to him, like, I've never been any doubt that they're going to finish top four. I'm looking at Chelsea's result last night and what United suddenly looked like. And I think Leicester are now in shit themselves zone. They will now be really looking at those two and Wolves, obviously, coming up behind them and thinking, bloody hell. That pressure then starts setting in, because if they'd have held on at Watford and beat Brighton, it's no danger. It's no danger at all. Now, Chelsea are 1 point behind and United are coming like a train, and United will go again before Leicester play at Everton on Wednesday. Suddenly, it's really, really close, and the pressure really is on them.
6 points.
They're 5 points clear of Manchester United and 5 points clear of Wolves, 1 point clear of Chelsea. So Wolves obviously play Saturday, United play Tuesday. So by the time Leicester kick off at Everton on Wednesday, they could only
win in it.
Exactly. They've got a better goal difference, admittedly, as well, but then it becomes pressure. And Leicester's fixture run is one of the more difficult ones left, I would say, in comparison to all the other three that are chasing them right now. So they'll become a little bit nervous. They don't look free scoring. Something is not clicking in the way that it was. But then also, again, to refer back to football. No, to be honest, they're one of the teams that I thought would have been really suited to this, but it hasn't really. I mean, the game against Brighton was an awful watch. Let's not make any bones about it. It was a poor game of football, certainly from a neutral perspective.
I mean, think about it. Bar Kasper Schmeichel, they could have lost that game.
Exactly. Exactly. Poor penalty by Mopé, by the way. But again, to refer back to the points, a little bit like what I'd referenced with Sheffield United last week, Leicester's points of 55 points from 31 games is a good return. That return right now would normally have them 6th or 7th in the league. That's the reality. It's because everybody else has been rubbish. Now, the three teams behind them, and we have to include Wolves in this, are really getting their act together and putting the pressure on. I don't, as a Spurs fan, I'm 11 points behind them with 7 games to go. They look completely uncatchable. But I would fancy us more chance of catching them than Chelsea.
Yeah.
And probably Manchester United as well. I just think they could completely fall away if the pressure gets to them. A little bit like what very nearly happened to Spurs last season. They're completely off my radar, Leicester. On Brighton, completely agree with what you say about Lamptey at right back. Very, very good. He's 4.0. I would, again, if you're wild carding now, I wouldn't go near that. But for those who might be thinking about holding on to the wild card to around about 35, 36, I would consider him. However, the problem with Brighton is always, always the same. We were shocked that Montoya didn't play against Arsenal when he picked Charlotto. Now Lamptey's played right back. Montoya hasn't played either. So we've got 3 players who can play in that position. I think generally it's a void. Brighton will be a comeback and look again around about game week 36, I think. I'm absolutely convinced they're going to be fine now, which I'm pleased about personally as well, because I think they're the best football team in that bottom 6.
And I think they're obviously helped by everybody else below them drawing. Well, Villa drew and everybody else.
With the way it's beginning to look, Brighton have given themselves a little bit of a gap now.
It's 2 wins, so
I think 1 win will keep Brighton up. They're 6 points clear of yourselves, Bournemouth and Villa. One more win will be enough.
Now. Yeah,
and their goal difference is a lot better as well.
36 is the number now, I think, that most people are looking at. Let's talk about Spurs 2, West Ham 0. We did do quite a bit on this in Tottenham, our Patreon podcast, but we haven't reviewed it on the main podcast, the Planet FPL Derby. But ultimately, we sat in so deep that we were going to get defensive mistakes. I said it, keep the ball, and eventually a defensive mistake. You had some good chances, quite a few shots from outside the box. Fabi had to make a few good saves. We just didn't have an out ball. Like Antonio and his own and Bowen, they worked their socks off, but they couldn't keep the ball. If we can't keep the ball, it keeps coming back at you, The guys put a shift in. As much as I moan about the players, I mean, Rice put a shift in, Bowen put a shift in, but quality told in the end, right? And you came through.
Yeah, get in there.
And to be honest, I didn't. It was only yesterday was the first time I saw even Moyes' post-match comments about the handball and all that kind of stuff. So that completely went over my head, even during Tottenham.
It shouldn't have counted. I said that to you. Shouldn't have
counted. So you won with a fluky flipping goal.
It's a disgraceful rule that they brought in. The rule is completely incorrect. But abiding by those rules, yeah, in my opinion, the goal should have been disallowed. That said, I've seen David Ellery, former ref, and Jolyon Lescott sitting on Sky this morning analysing it and going, they can't tell. Why are you lying? He's hit his arm. Why are you lying? It's just not necessary.
Oh, fantastic.
He clearly hit his arm. And by the law is, if it touches an arm in any way, goal gets ruled out. It's a shit rule. There's no way the goal should be disallowed, but by law it should be. To cover the game, and I'll sum it up quite quickly if I can. From the personal perspective, I was so fucking vexed in that first half watching Ben Davies be completely restricted, which is not something that's unusual. If you'd have listened to the commentary, Alan Smith acted like he'd never watched Spurs under Mourinho before. But all that it needed to open the game up was allow Ben Davies to go forward to give us more natural balance. That's what happened in the final 5 minutes of the first half. And then it continued in the second half and we were better.
Pre-lockdown, you can understand when Vertonghen had played at left back because he's not really an attacking fullback. But Ben Davies, we're talking about last season, even more the season before, he's been all right as an attacking left back. I can understand if you're going to play Vertonghen there because he's not a marauding forward getting crosses in player. But Ben Davies can do that. So it's weird to play him there and then pin him.
I think he's not an offensive fullback. He is more of a defensive fullback.
Ben Davies?
Yeah. He
picked up a lot of attacking returns.
He did. I just think it was an unusual spate, and his delivery is quite decent from the left flank. I mean, when he was competing with Danny Rose was by far the better choice when he was at his peak.
Yeah,
but Ben Davies has crossed him so much better. And Ben Davies got a run because of injuries to Danny Rose. And that's part why the returns came about. Spurs started that 17-18 season very well. Had some great away results. And Davies was heavily involved in the returns. Generally speaking, overall, is not a great FPL asset ordinarily. And when Mourinho wants to play that way, which I don't like, but if he wants to do it, fine. Ben Davies is the natural player to play that position. Me personally, at half-time on Tuesday night, I would have got Sessegnon on and played him at left back, personally. And just say, don't worry about it. Leave the back two with Antonio, because what happened was, when Davies started going forward, Jared Bowen, who'd had an influence for me in the first half, where he looked quite dangerous, had to go with him. And then Mikel Antonio was ridiculously isolated. And it was, do you know what? can Antonio beat the back two? And he nearly did it on one occasion, don't get me wrong. But at that point, we were getting you so far pinned back that for me, watching the game, I wasn't worried in that second half that we weren't going to score. It felt like an inevitability that it was going to come.
Listen, I've seen my team so long that it's always an inevitability going to score. I have to take some positives away from it. We did okay in recovering our defensive shape. You never want to go and see your team play with three defensive-minded midfielders in Noble, Rice and Souček. You're like, you set yourself up to create a base and then you're trying to feed off scraps. At least when we went one down, he brought on Anderson Lanzini and went for the game a little bit. And we did have a few chances, hit the post and stuff, but I felt like I'd rather have lost the game 2-0 or 3-0 with a chance of drawing 1-1, because if we hadn't made those changes, we were never going to get the game necessarily. Rice had a good game. I thought Bowen was okay. When Haller comes back into the team, he will free up Antonio and Bowen to actually do, to be a little bit more open in their play, or just kind of not so restricted. Antonio is the hold-up guy, doesn't work for me. But if he's using his strength to run at people and budge people off the ball and create chaos, with Haller as the guy that is winning the knock-ons and the knockdowns and whatever else, he'll be all right. So I'll be interested to see what happens with that. I've got one major concern, actually, which has nothing to do with West Ham. And I meant to put this out yesterday. Our Aston Villa correspondent, Adam Hopcroft, Hopcroft13 on Twitter, fantastic FPL player. Never had a rank out with six figures in it. I think he's been kidnapped or someone's nicked his phone or something, because he sent me a message on Twitter saying he's on Wildcard, asking me which West Ham defender he should be looking at. So if you're in the Birmingham area, I don't know, he's about 5'8", 5'9". Just check him out on Twitter. I'm worried for his safety, or someone's nicked his phone, got his Twitter login, or his password. Because I've seen his FPL record, and there's no way that Adam Hopcroft sent me that message.
The answer to the question is Lucas Fabianski. Who at 4.9.
He made a point. He goes, look, David Moyes loves a clean sheet. And actually, defensively, we were okay. We always make the one or two sloppy mistakes, but we're not going to play Spurs every week, who are going to create 20, 15 or 20 chances. Other teams who might only create 5 or 10 chances, we can get through and keep a couple of clean sheets. I don't think he's wrong. It's not for me, but I don't think he's wrong in that. So let's see.
For wildcarders in 33, or even if they're thinking it now, Fabianski and Martinez is a great rotation. You will probably most commonly pick Fabianski, by the way, but take this week, West Ham playing Chelsea, Arsenal playing Norwich. Like it just works on the rotation front. So if Fabianski would be the tip, if that's the way you want to go. There's been one clean sheet since the first game, the 4-0 win against Bournemouth in early January. That said, you have had a horrendous fixture run pretty much since, you had to play Liverpool twice in there, Man City, Arsenal, others as well, right? You've had a difficult Sheffield United. They've all been in there, all of them. It's been a difficult run of fixtures. And following the Chelsea game, Newcastle, Burnley, Norwich, Watford, Manchester United, Villa is a good running. Probably 7-8 points will keep you up, mate. 2 wins, 2 draws, something like that. You're capable. I don't think you're incapable of beating Chelsea either. It's a fixture that you've given them some trouble in certain games, particularly.
And I also think
not that it matters home and away at the moment, but
they've just won 2. They've gone strong against City. I'm hoping they go strong in the FA Cup, and then they use our game as the game that they rest players. And then we can obviously take the fight to them, because I think they'll go strong against Leicester in the cup. I think they've got a good chance in the cup, so I'm hoping so. And if they do that, then that'll be good. And again, it's the late kickoff. It's the 8:15 kickoff, so it should be a little bit cooler. And it's
I would love to see you play Haller and Antonio up against Christensen on Wednesday night. I don't think that you will, by the way. But I know what you're saying about Haller. There might be a lot of people thinking, I'm not sure about that. But I think it references back to the Southampton game you had before lockdown, when Haller and Antonio played together up front, and it did some damage.
Yeah,
it did some damage. And Jared Bowen played off the right. It was more like a 4-4-2.
Yeah. Haller himself won't pick up the points or returns or goals or assists, but he frees up other players. So.
I agree. It would certainly stop Antonio being isolated, just to cover off on Spurs, because this will probably cover off some quick questions at the end. There are 3 Tottenham assets you consider. One is Serge Aurier. It's 5.0. I think the situation is aiding Spurs at the moment in terms of potential defensive returns. Plus, under this system, we know he's essentially playing as a wing-back. And one of Spurs' robotic manoeuvres under Mourinho is to try and get Aurier in behind and into the box. I wouldn't advise it, but I can understand if people look at it. Harry Kane, I wouldn't be surprised if between now and the end of the season finishes as top goal scorer over this period. However, I don't really see at any point where you want to go and captain him. And therefore 10.9 feels like too much. If there's a regret on my wild card, it's the inclusion of Son, who for me didn't play well again. But it's like we've gone back 4 months in time here, so where I kept saying it in February, he's not playing well. He's not playing well. He's not playing well. And yet, he didn't play well again on Wednesday night. He's being hampered by how wide he's having to stay within this system when Aurier pushes up and Ben Davies doesn't. And yet, he's assisted Kane's goal and he's half a foot offside that would have got him a goal again. And suddenly you're looking at a 13-point return. And he's capable of that at any time. I can't tell you that he's playing well. I won't advise you to get him. I'm thinking of taking him out, but I do like the fixtures after Sheffield United. Everton, Bournemouth, Arsenal, Newcastle really appeals to me. The Sheffield United game will be so much tougher. And remember, if O'Connell's back, which we don't know at the moment if he is or he isn't, they're back to full strength. And we'll come on to them and kind of explain why they've had problems.
We'll come on to them now because the next game we're going to talk about is Manchester United 3, Sheffield United.
Oh, there you go. We'll go straight on to it then.
I really did think they'd give United more trouble, but they didn't. And United are on steamrolling through some sides now, playing particularly well where they look like they are going to go on a good run. Everybody's thinking Bruno Fernandes is the must-have asset for Manchester United.
Are they? It's all Anthony Martial now, isn't it?
Well, look, I suppose it's in the past we've had this problem with City, right? Is which ones do you pick? Because they're all at similar prices. Martial, Rashford, Pogba, and so on. You got Maguire and Wan-Bissaka. You're going to be in a situation where they're going to share most of the attacking returns throughout now and the end of the season. Don't faff about thinking, oh, I've missed this one, or this one's better value, or that one's better value. But for me, it's definitely just for the consistency. Martial, because he's out of position, he's a midfielder in this, so you're picking up a few extra points for each goal and the clean sheets over Rashford. And Wan-Bissaka is the two at the back. I think Maguire might pick up a few more yellow cards. That's all.
I went Maguire because I wanted one who had a bit more safety on starts. And that's essentially what it boiled down to in terms of the rest of my makeup. Laporte is always a risk. And the other 3 were fullbacks. Alonso is already a big risk. So I decided I wanted one in there. When it was such a close call, I decided to go Maguire over Wan-Bissaka to give me a little bit more safety. In hindsight, of course, I wish I'd gone for Wan-Bissaka. I think a key thing on Martial, if I decide to make a transfer this week, it will be Son to Martial. And I'll tell you why I'm warming to the idea slightly is looking a little bit at the numbers this morning when Martial's played with Fernandes, because clearly there's been an uplift since Fernandes has joined the club. So Fernandes' first game was a 0-0 draw with Wolves in game week 25. We're saying in the 7 games that includes, Manchester United have only conceded 2 goals. They've been much, much better, obviously. And in those games, obviously, if you include Martial's hat-trick on Wednesday night, he scored 6 goals in those 7 games. He'd also scored against City, Watford, and at Chelsea. These 7 fixtures have not been easy. Wolves, Chelsea, Watford, Everton, City, Tottenham, Sheffield United is not the easiest run of fixtures. Now, that can go 2 ways, I think, with Martial. One, the upcoming opponents are likely to sit a little bit deeper than some of these teams they played against. Not that anybody could be any deeper than Tottenham were on last Friday night in that second half. But then did Martial score in that second half?
Well,
very nearly, admittedly.
He was a Lloris incredible save. I don't think that save has had enough. I still look back at it, and the ball was gone behind him, and he managed to get the strength to tip it over. I think that Lloris save was a great save. He was that close to picking up an attacking return. So.
I wonder if there's a little bit in this with his mood, because I've often, as the regular listeners will know, moaned about him as a sulky player. Never looks happy. I always say he needs a good shag or a night out. That's how I feel about him. Watching him on the bench the other night when he came off and he's sitting there grinning, I'd never seen him smile like that before. He looked so happy. Yeah. And I wonder if a lot of that is that with Rashford is now a little bit more withdrawn. He was very creative on Wednesday night and he's hugging the left-hand side a lot more. He's looking at that team and he's going, I've got Rashford on one side, Greenwood the other side, who's, in terms of his creativity, is miles better than Daniel James. And he's now got Fernandes and Pogba as well. He's probably beginning to think, do you know what? If I make the movement, the ball will come. That might be what he's beginning to think. Now, I've already said, I think that Brighton fixture on Tuesday is potentially a little bit of a trap in that I think it's harder than it looks on paper. Because I think they're a decent side, actually.
The key in games like that, when you have the break teams, if you get the early goal, though, if they get the early goal, you'd expect United to then move on. So I think they're really going to push to try and get that early goal from United. Is there anything we talked about Sheffield United. Let's talk about their woes. In a game, Dean Henderson was missing. Jack O'Connell was missing. They did have injuries. So I don't know. I suppose I expected a bit more fight from Sheffield United to try their best to keep United out.
We spoke about this on Monday following the Newcastle game in terms of the problems of them missing a component. And O'Connell is a bigger miss as anyone. What I saw in that game on Wednesday night didn't surprise me at all. You're taking one of the best goalkeepers in the league this season, let's be honest.
If not
taking their main centre-half, and the imbalance of losing O'Connell with the overlapping runs put so much pressure to the right-hand side of the pitch, which we saw in the first half against Newcastle. In the United game on Wednesday, that didn't happen at all because it couldn't. I think they went on with, okay, we're going to be a bit more secure here. And then United scored quite early, which then they've got massive problems from there. They offered nothing. They are, truthfully, one of the poorest attacking teams in this league. However, if they've got O'Connell back on Thursday night against Spurs, which we know Henderson and Egan will be back because they were ineligible for the United game, then they're back at full strength and they will give Tottenham a proper football game. And I'm not looking forward to it. I think if O'Connell doesn't play, we'll beat them. I think if O'Connell plays, they'll beat us. That's genuinely, I think it's that important. That's how I feel about it at the moment.
Are you going back for any Sheffield United assets at the moment, or are you kind of done?
No, they're completely off my radar. The fixtures are too tough. I'm sure there will be a couple of clean sheets in there, but it's going to be tough. And as I already said, I feel like with Son, he'll do a lot of chasing back of Baldock on Thursday. And that's what makes me want to kind of maybe go that Son to Martial. It doesn't even look like a gamble to me. Although I feel like there's a few fixtures afterwards where I might actually prefer Son again. But then on the other side of game week 32, I'm walking into Martial against Bournemouth. That shouldn't hold any fear either. So from being in a position where probably following Wednesday night, I was like, okay, do you know what I don't want? I'm warming to the idea, thinking about it more and more in terms of regrets with Son and what Martial's capability is at the moment with Fernandes. I feel is becoming a little bit more. What I need to weigh up is if I make that move, I'm then locked into the 3 United players, which isn't an issue. But I'm really thinking about Greenwood as well, as I said.
Yeah, I was gonna. One of my
questions really am.
Like, which of your 3 assets would make way for Mason Greenwood?
For me, probably Calvert-Lewin.
No, sorry. Which Manchester United asset? You're only allowed 3 of them. So if you've got
I've got Maguire and Fernandes.
Maguire.
So yeah, I mean, if I go Greenwood, I can't go Martial, can I? That's part of the point. If I go Martial, and I know the chances are, if I go that way, he's going to really piss me off. Then I can't get to Greenwood. And actually, it's a weighing up of, do I want Martial, who I'm beginning to think will outscore Son, or do I want to get Greenwood? And then the power then allows me Son to say Mane if I then decide I want to go that way. That's what I need to weigh up is really important.
Let's talk about the next game, which was Newcastle 1, Aston Villa 1. Newcastle were leading for quite a while, but here we go again. Another clean sheet for Newcastle. and Villa are done and dusted here.
You mean another clean sheet for Matt Ritchie? You're getting obsessed with it.
No, but honestly, I was tempted to double up on Lascelles as well, right, at one point. So I did feel like the Newcastle defensive double up was going to become a differential that I could play on, but not so much now. I'm gonna miss Bournemouth and West Ham, and then I didn't really want Man City, Watford, Tottenham following that. So. But I did think it was potential. Look, they have been good at the back, Newcastle, this season.
So again, I didn't hear a word you just said the last 25 seconds or so, mate.
They have been good at the back.
I'll take your word on it, and hopefully I won't repeat anything that you just said. I think the thing with Newcastle is, we have to remember this, they're not good.
They've not been bad at the back.
They're not a good...
They're not
a good side.
This season. They've been keeping
that's the reality. No, listen, people like the Cells at 4.2. People like the Cells at 4.2, 4.3, whatever he is absolutely great. It's not been on my radar to pay the extra for Matt Ritchie. I know the temptation. He's playing in an attacking position. He's 5.3, etc., etc. He's probably the penalty taker as well. He's now got a yellow flag. Actually, I don't know the injury status.
Yeah, it's just a knock
at the moment, and. As they're playing, we'll put it this way, as they're playing on Wednesday against Bournemouth, we probably aren't going to know. Mind you, we've got City in the Cup on Sunday, haven't they? So we might get some team news before the deadline to find out what the status is of him. I would imagine the City game's a priority. Also consider for them, that's going to be knackering to play Man City at the moment and then go and play Bournemouth on the Wednesday. So that could be an advantage for Bournemouth, actually. I wouldn't pay more than the Stells. I told you, I couldn't justify that extra 1 million if I wanted to go that way. But I'm happy to go without. I think Sai called it absolutely spot on. Our correspondent FPL Footballer wrote a great article for us on Tuesday. It's now or not at all. Go before the Villa fixture. Now, if you went Ritchie, it's paid off for you. If you went somewhere else, you've been unlucky. St. Maximin is decent. It's value, 5.4. I won't argue. But for me, they're off radar, I'm afraid.
Should we talk about the next game of the week, which was Norwich 0, Everton. Norwich are dead and buried now, surely.
Villa need to find a system that will get the best out of Jack Grealish. Got nothing else to add on that.
Let's talk about Norwich 0, Everton 1. Sorry, James. Can you hear me?
Well, it was Yeah, but barely, mate. You are on my Zoom call at the moment. You are like not there. So I'm working on guesswork, which I'll continue to do, by the way. But if you've got any other devices going,
now,
please turn them the fuck off. So big surprise of obviously the Norwich team with no Campbell, no Key. It's interesting. Going back to Mark FPL Badger, our Norwich correspondent, who said that he was more looking forward to the FA Cup game and kind of wanted them to put their eggs into that. Now, in my opinion, they can put as many eggs as they want into that game against Manchester United. They won't beat them on Saturday, even if they strongly rotate. But it was still a shock to see no Cantwell and Pukki in that team. I mean, you talk about teams off the radar. Can't be anyone further off the radar than Norwich. Even that's Arsenal next, which is like forget about them. Finished. I can't see him recovering. I tell you where I have some real sympathy with them is that these two home fixtures, Southampton and Everton, and with a crowd, it might have gone very differently. And if they'd won them two games, they'd be level with you, mate. And then it's a different proposition. I can't see them winning the 4 or 5 games they're going to need to in the final 7 games to stay up. I think,
and it's the same problem. It's the same problem we spoke about previously. Like they're not going to keep clean sheets. They're going to need to score at least 2 or 3 to win games. They're going to be conceding 1s and 2s. Same problem that Villa are going to have. They're going to need to score 2 or 3 goals in every game just to be able to get a draw or a win. So, yeah, Norwich done and dusted for me. I'm not looking at them at all. Do you think there's anything in Everton? I did have a sneaky eye on Richarlison at 8.3 million. Luca Dean's popped up on a few people's radars, but they also don't interest me really.
Luca Dean's actually a little bit more interesting from the perspective of there being less goals in games. Their fixture run actually is not too bad left. You could argue Leicester and Tottenham as the next 2 is probably not the most enticing time to go on. The fixture run's okay, and with more clean sheets, someone like Luca Dean actually appears back on the radar. It'd be a big differential at the moment. He's on all the set pieces. We still don't know who Everton's penalty taker is this year. They haven't had one all season. Sigurdsson had obviously had a very indifferent record on them. We think there's a possibility that Dean might even be the penalty taker, but we have no idea. As they haven't had one yet, I certainly wouldn't bank on it. But I wouldn't rule him out, actually. Richarlison's FPL returns gets overlooked. What is he, the 5th or 6th highest scoring midfielder this year?
Yeah.
It's very good at 139 FPL points at 8.3 million is good. We shouldn't overlook that. It's a very, very good return. He's capable. Calvert-Lewin's capable. I think if you were going in, you were going in before Norwich. I think there's a lot of people who would have gone in on maybe even 3 of them, all 3 of those players that were mentioned on a free hit, possibly. And there's probably a big frustration on that now, unless you went for Luca Dean, because Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin you thought would have been right in line to return against Norwich, and didn't overly particularly come close. The thing that annoyed me most about this game was Everton playing in pink. That shit really annoys me. I don't get that. Playing blue. Was it clashed with yellow and green? That stuff really annoys me. It shouldn't, but it really, really does.
Yeah, bizarre. What's your views on, let's talk about Wolves 1, Bournemouth 0. We know what we're getting with Wolves. There's so many assets there. I think we've talked them to death. There's nothing wrong with having all 3. You definitely want Jimenez. You definitely want Traore. If you can afford Doherty, go for it. If you can't, Bolly, Saiss, whoever you go for it. Bournemouth, whilst they're still ahead of Villa, they're level on points with us. I feel they're the next after Norwich that I'm most worried about. For a team with Callum Wilson, Josh King, Brooks, I don't know where the goals are going to go. I don't know where the goals are going to come from.
I think it's really, really, really hoping at the moment that David Brooks is going to turn things up for them. Obviously, without Josh King, it's still unconfirmed how serious the injury that he picked up against Crystal Palace is. From an FPL perspective, can't look at Bournemouth. I would cover them off before Wolves just very briefly. I spoke about this in my stream yesterday. Eddie Howe's face after the game I thought was quite haunting. He looked like a man who knew the writing was on the wall. But they've still got every chance of getting out of it. You know, they haven't got any less of an opportunity than yourselves or Villa, for example, except for when you look at what's next. So, I mean, to say that Newcastle on Wednesday for them is must win is no understatement when they look at what's left. After Newcastle, Manchester United, Tottenham, Leicester, Manchester City, Southampton and Everton is their finish. Like Newcastle they've got to win it. Can't be anything else. They have to beat Newcastle. Even if you lose to Chelsea and Villa lose to Wolves, which I think on paper we'd all expect right now, this is the week for Bournemouth to try and take advantage. And if they can get ahead, mentality-wise, it might be different. To then
scoreboard pressure does help.
To then, know that Manchester United's a free swing. And by the time that Tottenham comes around in game week 34, they might be in a position where for Tottenham's season would effectively be over quite possibly by then as well. Then it becomes a different game or fixture. Then that would actually become must-win for them as well. Massive pressure on them. They have to beat Newcastle in midweek. I'm not convinced that they will, by the way. On Wolves, my plan was very much to think of coming off to Wolves, off Traore, actually. But what I've seen over these 2 games, the West Ham game and the Bournemouth game, and you see the capability of what he can do in these conditions, even if it's for a short 10, 15-minute burst or so in a game, he's likely to get returns. He must feel as well, because there was so many similarities with the Bournemouth goal to the West Ham goal. He knows now as well. He puts it in that area. He's got a bloke up front who's not going to miss. He's so good in front of goal, Jimenez. And I loved that. The cross against West Ham made the goal. The cross was equally as good against Bournemouth, but the header this time was sensational. Absolutely brilliant goal. He is so good in front of goal. The flip is, what was that? We were about 20 minutes to go.
Yep.
It was the first shot on target in the game. Wolves only had 2. Bournemouth admittedly had none. It wasn't a good game of football.
Yeah, I don't really worry about that with Wolves in much the same way that they call Jamie Vardy a stats buster, where he doesn't have that many chances. I don't think Wolves are like that either. They pick and choose their moments to go for it. So I'm not too worried about that particular stat from Wolves. On probably a nice hot muggy afternoon, which the players would have been quite tired.
Win here for Bolly owners, who would have got the extra bonus on top of Doherty, but as you know from the previous weekend, that can swing. Just something to pick up on Doherty, because I didn't pick up on it on the previous game week. But he's only 11 FPL points behind Robertson. And obviously Robertson, with the assist on Wednesday night, has strengthened that lead between the two. But that's the level that Doherty's at, 135 points. That's in the same sort of value we just mentioned for Richarlison. It's
very good.
Big. His price of 6 million at the start of the season has become very, very justified over the last few weeks. And actually, if you date back a little bit with Matt Doherty, he's lost 7 FPL returns, 6, 6, 10, 12, 6, 12, 6. He's monstrous. Wolves have obviously had 6 clean sheets in that period, but he got a goal and assist in the 3-2 win at Tottenham in game week 28. And it's the capability of that, which is why I think Doherty's worth the extra.
Liverpool 4, Palace 0. Palace, another one that I'm putting in the FPL bin between now and the end of the season. Not looking at them at all. I know we're speaking with Mig, our Crystal Palace correspondent for Clash of the Correspondents for next week's show. So do stay tuned to that. Be interested in on his take, but which I'm happy to listen to for the footballing point of view, but I'm not looking at Crystal Palace from the FPL point of view at all. A lot of us were on triple Liverpool. This is where I think there's that people have come off Liverpool. Do they need to go back?
Yes.
No,
in a word, they were fantastic.
Most people will have held Trent, and some will have held Salah or Mane. It's just whether or not you want to go back for the third. I'm not fully convinced that you need a third.
Well, I'm only on Trent at the moment, and I think for this week against Manchester City, that's absolutely fine. I think when we sit down next Friday, it becomes a very, very different conversation potentially. Like I said, if I go Son to Martial, I'm basically ruling out if I want to decide to add Mane or Salah back in. For me, the priority after Man City would be to get Robertson back in personally. But I'll wait till I judge on what I see in that City game in terms of what I think of tiredness, potentially ahead of, plum fixture against Aston Villa in game week 33. It will be really, really difficult to look beyond them. The other thing for me on Liverpool, beginning to think about it, I've spoken about it on a couple of podcasts already this week. Trent Alexander-Arnold is now level on FPL points with Sadio Mane. He's only 10 behind Mohamed Salah. At which point do we decide that Trent is just as viable as captain as these guys on any given week?
Now, I've seen people doing it. And I'll tell you what, I don't want to bring back haunting memories, James, but that week when you triple captained Sadio Mane, there was a reasonable amount of the community, myself included, that went with Trent as their triple captain. And that was the safe, simple option where I thought, okay, 1 clean sheet out of the 2 fixtures and 1 attacking return out of the 2 fixtures is good enough for me with Trent. And if he does up on that, you're going all the. I think he picked me up 24 points, maybe more. Maybe it was a 32 pointer. I can't remember the exact numbers on that. It wouldn't have been 32, it would have been 33. But someone on Twitter or what have you will remind us. But I went with the safe option. So we're not far off, James. People did think, okay, you know what? He's a safe but potentially explosive captaincy option.
I think Villa, Brighton, Burnley, 33 to 35. Right now, if you said you've got to lock it in now, in fact, let me put it a different way. If I got hit by a bus, he'd be my captain for the rest of the season. I'm beginning to come to terms with, I've always raved about him. And it's like, I even tweeted the official account the other night when they were saying about his returns and etc. And I tweeted him and I said, stop fucking about. Next year, this geezer needs to be at least 9 million. And people keep sitting there and going, "Oh, he's a defender. He can't be that much." The clean sheets are the add the clean sheets with the amount of attacking returns he's getting. It's absolutely phenomenal, right? He's 13 points off 200 for a defender. He's going to absolutely smash it.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Add 13 clean sheets on top of that. Add 13 clean sheets on top of that. He's now got 30 direct returns in 31 games.
Yeah, it's the reliability that we love in FPL. And let's talk about yesterday's games. We've got a few more to rattle through. We might have some time for some of our friends on Twitter's questions.
Before you do, just a quick thing on Palace. A quick thing on Palace. I know someone who's buying a Palace player this week.
Who's that?
You really need to sort your wife
Oh,
right
sorry,
out.
mate.
That man is Asmir Begovic. He's told me that he's strongly looking at Gary Cahill this week. And I think that's very fixture related to the fact that they've got Burnley this week. However, I'm like you. I'm of the opinion that the fixtures for them going forward, if you would compare them with other teams at similar values, the likes of Burnley, for example, I foresee much more clean sheets in other teams with considering what Palace have got left. And they got absolutely ripped the other night. And one interesting thing about the Palace team the other night was that Mamadou Sakho was back in that team, who really on paper you would think, yeah, him and Cahill are the best partnership. But Scott Dan wasn't in the team and suddenly it dropped off, whereas they'd had 4 previous clean sheets with Dan and Cahill playing together. It might be something to keep an eye on. But yeah, Palace would be well off the radar.
What about the two that we're going to talk about, which was one of the early games yesterday? Burnley 1, Watford 0. Now, I know you're on Nick Pope.
I mean, not that anybody would let me go for Nick Pope, but I did go for it anyway.
I don't know from either teams. No players have really popped up. Dwight was still a good option, still getting returns, still a little bit expensive at 6.1, but less than 1% owned. He's got 9 attacking returns now, which is not bad for someone at that kind of value. But I think because Wood and Barnes are injured, Chris Wood and Barnes, Jay Rodriguez, 5.7.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that potentially while Wood and Barnes are out, but I probably would want to be paying the little bit extra of reliability on Calvert-Lewin, actually, even a little bit more at 6.5. If you're stuck at that value, I really don't hate Jay Rodriguez as a punt. You know, the great thing about Nick Pope is as well, when you look at your team when he's in it, he's got that nice little star next to him as well now. Top scoring goalkeeper this season.
He's been very good and very consistent.
I've seen a lot of frustration from people who obviously watched the game Monday night and had perhaps launched their wild card like I did, and were like, and there were all these rumours, weren't there? Sean Dyche has had a bust up with the chairman, etc., etc., and thinking, Burnley have been blown. No, I took one look at Burnley's fixtures, not judging them on Manchester City, and went, do you know what? I think there are 4 or 5 clean sheets in there. Mm-hmm. One down. Palace on Monday night can very, very easily be another one. I wonder how many people watched that Monday night, Palace and Burnley. It's not the most appetising fixture, is it? I mean, it's literally nothing. There's nothing on it at all.
I went straight down to Southampton Arsenal on the old Skybox Live. And let's go straight down to Southampton Arsenal now. First away win for Mikel Arteta. I didn't.
Is it the first?
That. 7 attempts. First away league win for Mikel Arteta in 7 attempts. It's been there. I was very surprised with that. But they were better. Eddie Nketiah, in much in a similar way, Guendouzi has a little bit of fight and fight to him. He's much more physical. Rather than trying to be a silky, smooth footballer, he's a little bit more physical and gets himself about a lot more than some of the other Arsenal players have in the past.
I think Nketiah's shown that he can be a goal scorer. I think Adam had obviously highlighted him when we had him on at 352, when we had him on with FPL Pringle.
No, Nketiah was strongly tipped pre-season because he scored a few goals in America when Arsenal went away on pre-season. I know a lot of Arsenal fans were disappointed when he went on loan to Leeds, wasn't he? He went for a little while. That the club didn't keep him, and then they did get him back at Christmas, January, or what have you, and so now he's in the squad and starting lineup.
Well, it looks like, generally speaking, he's probably got the nod over Lacazette. Although I think, they'll keep rotating, and Ketcher played against City, Lacazette will play against Brian. So again, it might be one of them, looking at him, his value, Greenwood's value, where you're making a game-by-game choice, as long as you're strong enough in the rest of your squad, where you decide whether to start or not start these guys. This week, you can't make the choice until after. Well, you have to make the choice before the Sheffield United game. You haven't got the information, which is really, really tough. I think if you've got Arsenal assets, they're probably worth the gamble. I'm not going to start Saka, but then I'm already in a position where I'm potentially leaving Danny Ings out, right? So it's possibly a slightly different position where I've not gone for as much power. I've gone for a balanced power, if you will. But I think for the most people, the upside is probably to go for it. And the same applies to Aubameyang captainers, where if you're asking me, I don't think he'll start against Norwich. But I also think...
Who, Eddie and Ketcher or Aubameyang?
Aubameyang.
Yeah.
But I think there's a chance that neither of them start, as it would stand right now. But
because Martinelli's still sitting in the wings and not had any action since...
He's injured. He's out for the season.
Is he out, is he?
He's out for the season.
I didn't see that. Well, then forget that.
So therefore, if Martinelli can cover on the left, if you think about that as well, and look, Aubameyang's their best player. Aubameyang's going to play 90, 95% of the games all the time. Just the way the fixtures run out, as we'd said earlier, the Norwich game just looks absolutely right for him to miss out. But I also think he could still do damage in half hour against them. And I think the upside, when there aren't, with Liverpool and City playing each other, there's far less standout options this week. If I had Aubameyang in my squad, I'd captain him. But I absolutely wouldn't consider buying him either, if that makes sense. And I wouldn't sell it. I wouldn't sell him either.
No.
I think that's exactly where you're at. Don't buy, don't sell. If you've got him, captain him. And you're going to have to sit there and worry about it for the next 4 days or so.
How long are you going to stick
with?
with...
He's worth the upside, potentially.
Southampton assets not highly owned, so we don't really want to dwell on them a lot.
No, but the problem for them is
into City,
defensively.
Everton, United. They've got some tough games coming up as well, and especially they're away at Watford this week, which is a team that are fighting for their lives. I'm glad to see the back of McCarthy in my team.
He's ropey as. The problem with them is, and I keep saying this, I think they have the genuine makings of a very, very good team there, actually. Obafemi looks lively. There was periods in that second half where they pushed Arsenal back and it felt like the equaliser was going to come, actually. The problem is, defensively, they are bog standard. They're bad, really bad. And I'm not sure if they're going to be able to invest to improve that. So until they do, they're always going to be a side that flirts with mid-table towards struggling with relegation, because defensively, they're very, very weak. And at this stage of the season as well, where, let's say, goals are not exactly at a premium, then they're liable to get beaten games more than others. It's interesting, when Liverpool played Villa, the same night on the Sunday, Man City play at Southampton. And in an odd way, I'd possibly prefer City assets. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I just think the way City could open them up could really do some damage, where, I think even in Villa's case against Liverpool, at 2-0 down, they might start thinking about goal difference and stuff, because it could come down to that sort of thing, couldn't it? Yeah. Whereas I think Southampton will probably be open and play with a little bit more freedom. The flip of that is Southampton have a week's rest to build up to that Manchester City game. So always plus and negatives, but I'd expect City could go there and do real damage to them. And I think Hassan Hootel, I thought it anyway to leave Danny Ings out. And just before we started recording, Hassan Hootel said there will be changes on Sunday as well. And I think there's a strong possibility, personally opinion, that Danny Ings may well miss out on Sunday. And he's the
Is there a chance you bin Danny Ings between now and the end of the season? Are you tempted?
Oh, yeah, he'll go.
I'm getting rid of him on my wild card. I think I was originally going to keep him, but I think now, looking at their fixtures and stuff, I think Danny Ings is well and truly in.
He'll go, or I'll decide to bench him a lot, which is dangerous. Because he has returned in big games this year, right, as well. So.
No, he has, and he is their main attacking threat, no doubt about that. Let's wrap up the games with the late kickoff yesterday. I don't have BT Sports or James. It's all on you for a detailed analysis. But if you look at it, Chelsea won. Ederson made more saves than Kepa. I don't know what that says, but City kept the ball really well.
Chelsea had 10 shots on target.
Yeah, it's decent.
That's incredible.
I had 0 Chelsea assets on my radar. I have 0 Chelsea players in my wildcard team, yet they've won 2 games. They've created a bunch of chances and looking good, actually, on the whole. Even Pulisic and stuff, looking good.
Yeah, just firstly, because we should have probably said it at the top of the show, but haven't. Congratulations to all our Liverpool listeners.
I think we did, didn't we?
Did we?
I think so. I don't know. If we didn't...
If we did, congrats. If we didn't, congrats again.
Congrats.
Or the other way round, whatever. However, the game was a painful watch for me, as hearing Liverpool get mentioned every fucking 10 seconds. Certainly on BT's coverage, if people were watching on that. When I'm sitting there as a Spurs fan, really willing Manchester City to do some damage, it wasn't a good night for my team. I can certainly say that, hoping that Chelsea would drop points. But to refer to Chelsea, I think pre-restart, a lot were looking at Abraham. It's now the 2 games now, Giroud's got favouritism. And I actually foresee it staying that way. I think Giroud is better for the link-up players of Willian, Pulisic. Pulisic now very much comes onto the radar, I think. Is it a good price? What is he, 6.9?
I will check that for you, sir.
The way he took the goal was excellent. Excellent. It must be said that Benjamin Mendy, I mean, that's circus stuff, what he's pulled on there, where Gundogan tells him to go away. Mendy decides he's going to run up to the ball and pass it to Gundogan, who's only 2 yards away from him, then dives in when he doesn't need to. It must be said, it wasn't highlighted enough that Pulisic completely slowed him down, at which point Mendy thinks he's got him. And then he had an incredible burst of pace over 2-3 yards to then get away very quickly. Pulisic's really interesting at 6.9. It's worth saying that he spent long periods of the winter injured and unfit. He certainly looked fit last night. And I think he's very, very capable between now and the end of the season. And I think he's potentially one who'll be a very good asset at the start of next season, by the way, in spite of them adding Ziyech and Timo Werner into the team. So really close eye on Pulisic. The other thing for myself is, people said, you can't leave all that money on the benches. I'm really pleased that Marcus Alonso's in my team ready for midweek. Although I am also hoping that he gets a rest against Leicester, which I feel for a lot of my players. I'm sure others are in that same boat. But yeah, I'm looking at West Ham and I'm thinking, yeah, for Alonso, do you know what? He's going to be a big differential for me. He's either going to be a 1-point return or we could well get me a double pointer. He's 3.6% owned overall. And I think he's a very, very good differential shout. Looks like at the moment, he looks like at the, I mean, 6.2. If you had peak Marcus Alonso, 6.2, you'd take some of that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It looks at the moment like he's got the spot. The fear on that is, of course, Emerson potentially, but more Reece James is the real fear, that Reece James comes back in at right back and Azpilicueta goes to left back. That's the bigger fear. But I think what might be happening here is a classic case of we've got fewer goals happening in games. Why don't I put the left back on the pitch who can get me a goal from anywhere at any time? And therefore, I think he's a sneaky shout for the remainder. And I'm pleased he's in my squad. He will start for me this week.
Yeah, indeed. That was a good rundown of all of the fixtures, James. I think we've been into enough detail on all of them, and hopefully...
I went into loads of detail. I couldn't hear you for most of it.
Well, we'll be able to figure that out on the old editing and what have you. Should we look at some Twitter questions, James? We've got...
All right, let's do that.
Do 3 or 4 Twitter questions and see if there's any good ones. This is an interesting one. FPL Geek Sweden. Which teams would you triple up on if you had a free hit for game week 32?
Wolves.
I was going to
Manchester United, in spite of me saying
Arsenal?
it's going to be a more difficult fixture.
And
I wouldn't go anywhere near Spurs, by the way. Genuinely, the best Spurs asset for a 1-week punt is Aurier. Yeah, because of Sheffield United's weakness in terms of going forward. Arsenal's a problem, though, isn't it? I'm saying don't buy it. With the free hit, if you go Aubameyang, for me, you got to captain him. It's a huge, huge risk, in my opinion. It's just the way their fixtures fall. I can see him missing out. So, no, I would favour Wolves and Manchester United first. I would favour the sides that generally don't have the cup issues to worry about. So I feel like a good shout from a value perspective this week would perhaps be Ismail Assar. We didn't really talk about Watford at all. They had a good spell. Burnley had the best of the first half yesterday, but Watford at 0-0 in the second half before Burnley scored were having the better of it. Danny Welbeck, I'm not recommending as an FPL asset, but actually him being in that team makes him a little bit better offensively as well. Doucouré got rested, so he's a definite starter. So Doucouré might also be a really interesting one for free hitters. I can't recommend Bournemouth to you, I'm afraid. I really, really can't, as much as that kind of appeals. And I think you should be going big defensively. And I would skip City and Liverpool.
There are a lot of questions, James, this week about free hit. I think obviously a lot of people are putting their free hit out to avoid the Manchester City versus Liverpool game. We'll come back onto that. Maybe we'll be picking a free hit side.
Just worth saying, actually, I'll tell you what, you want an interesting one for free hit. Sorry to interrupt, Suj.
No problem.
I meant to say this earlier. Callum Wilson got his 10th booking in the Wolves game. He's suspended. If you're really, really brave this week, Dominic Solanke, 5.1 million, 0.3% owned. There is your ultimate madman punt for the game week. That
is a little bit too mad for my liking, James. I can't read out your Twitter handle because it's very long, but it's Janesh. And is Ismail Assar a good pick for the rest of the season, James, in your opinion?
Yeah, I like Sarr. I think Doucouré is absolutely fine as well. I couldn't believe that he wasn't in the team yesterday. I guess that's them just thinking fixtures coming up and rotating. Perhaps the heat might have had something to do with it. But, I mean, Doucouré is certainly a lock for this weekend now. I'm pretty sure that's the first time Doucouré hasn't started under Pearson, I would have thought. And Sarr, I think, is a lock now. The reason I say about Welbeck is I think he's a more threatening proposition than Pereira. Feels like they've got a bit of pace and power in that front three now. You add Doucouré to that as a 4. It's powerful and it's quick. Sarr is the one who has the biggest capability to go mental on a given game week. That said, he's another one. He could be in line for that because Doucouré was left out yesterday and Sarr was one of the ones that played. It makes me a bit concerned that those who did start in the offensive positions for Watford might not play this game week. But I think Ismail Assar, rest of the season, we've got a really good run. Southampton, Chelsea, Norwich, Newcastle, West Ham. He's a good run. You might want to escape before the last two, which is Manchester City and Arsenal. But yeah, I like Sarr. Really like Sarr for that 34 to 36 period. Really good fixtures.
The last question that we're going to do, most of the other questions, James, here are all about Manchester United assets. Free hit in game week 32. Or what do we do with Liverpool players now that they've won the league, which we've addressed in to talk about the games. But FPL Wilson says, is 3-5-2 the new way with a lack of forwards doing well, getting in Ketcher as the bench and stacking the midfield? I mean, 3 at the back should surely be, for me, 4 or 5 at the back. So I'd be happy with a 5-4-1 or a 4-4-2, but generally a 5 or 4 at the back, and 3 or 4 in midfield, and then 2 or 1 up front.
I think it's all right. I think this week, this week for free hitters, I'd probably say it's a 3 at the back job because City and Liverpool playing each other.
Yes.
But otherwise, I think, 4, even 5 at the back is okay. We wildcarded a differential team this week and we played 5-2-3 and captained Anthony Martial. Our only 2 midfielders were Martial and Son. And the back 5 and the goalkeeper all returned.
Yeah.
I don't have fear on it. But I wouldn't cut the corners on that. I wouldn't have, for example, Jamal Lascelles or Charlie Taylor regularly as part of that back 5. When are you going to end up in a position where you got 4.5 million midfielders? I don't think so, really. I think, Wilson's there is probably right in terms of saying, cut one up front and catch your Greenwood or something like that, and then play them when you feel the timing is right. I think that's a very sensible approach. Greenwood is potentially going to stop me getting Martial. That's where I'm at right now.
Interesting. I mean, I played something you mentioned about Fabianski being a good rotator with Martinez. If I went to Fabianski in goal instead of the safe pick of Ederson, it allows me to get a Man City defender, be it Laporte. My back 5 would be Doherty, Robertson, Trent, Laporte, and Wan-Bissaka. I mean, that just feels so strong. You'd want to. Who would you leave out from those other than Laporte would get rotated, and obviously they play City and Liverpool play each other this week, which makes it a little bit frustrating and difficult. But it's not. It's only a one-off, right? So, and then you go from there.
Just to come back onto the Fabianski Martinez rotation. West Ham have two very difficult fixtures left, which are Chelsea this week and Manchester United in game week 37. Martinez's respective games are Norwich and Aston Villa. And that's why I highlight that as a really good rotation. So if you go with those two as a pairing in goal, which will only cost you, 9.1, it gives you Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley, Norwich, Watford, Villa. That's a good rotation.
There we go. In a season full of rotation, a time of the season full of rotation, James has found the perfect rotation.
This week is going to be, I'm telling you, 1, low scoring, 2, brutal.
Just because of the spacing out of the games. I mean, it's not often that you have a game week where the games are spread out so far and you've got FA Cup games to throw into the mix as well. So buckle yourselves in and enjoy the ride, because it is a game after all, and we're here to have fun. Do you want to let everybody know what else, get my words out there, James, we have left for them this week and what they can look forward to maybe in the early part of next week?
So I'll be on YouTube tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. with my new deadline stream. Come on, if you've got any last-minute questions, I'll help you out with that. Hopefully we'll get a team leak on Wolves. So I might not be talking the last 5 minutes if it's proven that Raul Jimenez is not playing, because I'll need to go and change my captain is how it stands. For the Champ Man players, I'll be streaming again 2:30. We'll have some fun at that, and I'll cover. Is there a 3 o'clock game? I think I'm going to cover Leeds and Fulham while that's on as well, because I've been meaning to catch up with Leeds. That's a big fixture as the two of them push for promotion in that league as well. Little bit different next week. Monday will be Clash of the Correspondents with at McTavius and Turfy Topper. We'll be talking about Palace and Burnley. Yeah, it's completely inconsequential. But I tell you what, for the Sky players out there, this is a really interesting one as well. So we'll have a chat with them. We'll find out Jack's opinion in terms of what's happening there with Sean Dyche, if he's got any concerns on that. We'll get Mig's opinion on the latest with Palace, because Palace are one of the ones being linked with Sean Dyche as well. Tuesday, we'll bring back the People's Poll for a week. It will probably be related to something about the FA Cup games gone or the weekend games gone. We'll have the vote out for that on Monday. Wednesday will be Sky. Thursday, I'll do Ask James. Friday, full review of all game week 32 games, just like now.
Exactly. So I hope you've been enjoying the content. If you have enjoyed the content, then you should know that we also have a Patreon where we produce extra additional podcasts for anybody that wants to support us. It's from £3 up to 14 quid a month. Everything helps us produce all of this amazing content that I think we do. So you get a weekly quiz. We'll sometimes do a Tottenham show. You'll get an additional Q&A, all sorts of fun and games in that. You can head over to patreon.com/PlanetFPL. Go on.
I was going to say, if you go at the £8 tier, which gives you all the access to the podcast, you'll be paying 35p per Patreon podcast next month.
Only?
That's all.
It's
35p a podcast.
It's about a penny a minute. It's fantastic. So yeah, do head over to that, because anybody that does sign up, we do appreciate it. To be honest with you, and I'm being brutally honest, based on the date, sign up on the 1st of July, because if you sign up between now and the 1st of July, it will charge you again on the 1st of July. And we're not all about making the profit. So in my opinion, if you're going to wait, you may as well wait till the 1st of July. It's no biggie.
Oh yeah, and there's another podcast that should drop today as well.
Yes, tell everybody about that before I wrap up with one other.
So I spent my morning, this is the 3rd podcast I've recorded today, and it won't be the last either, by the way. I spent my morning having a good chat with former Premier League goalkeeper, currently at AC Milan, Asmir Begovic, for his Season of Sports podcast. It's about 35 minutes long. It's completely based on FPL, very much looking at game week 32 and ahead. So if you want to catch up with that today, we'll get that shared, etc. Asmir has told me he will release that today. He might have even released it before this goes live.
I'm looking forward to it, actually. That's going to be a really, really good listen.
Great fella to talk to. And he's so into his fantasy sports. His channel is all sports, basically. He's obviously extremely passionate about football. He's really into his American sports and stuff as well.
Fascinating. I'm really excited to listen to that. Yeah, just the ability to have a conversation about fantasy football with a pro footballer who's played the game.
There's some fascinating insight onto it.
It's just interesting. It really, really is interesting. So do that. Wherever you're listening to your podcast, make sure you like, subscribe, and what have you. And you've just reminded me one other shout out, James, which I completely forgot about. And this one, a lot of our regular listeners won't know, but you will have met. Do you remember Raj? He popped over to London. Raj,
great lad. He's not shy of a word or two.
And the reason he's important is he gave Manchild the name Manchild in a podcast that he did with Fat Man Scoop.
I'm glad.
Raj and I have been friends for a long time, and he's a lot of the inspiration behind a lot of the stuff we do. We generally do things with no aim in mind. He's one of the people like me that will just say, screw it, do it, and we'll figure it out afterwards, including things like starting this podcast. We've launched the Gary V books together and what have you. And he was obviously behind Manchild getting his name. He's a massive behind-the-scenes advocate for the show. Like, he's always just saying, keep going, your numbers are incredible. It's his birthday today. So this guy is 40. I don't give shout-outs to a lot of people ever, but he's a real top guy. And he's launched his own podcast today on his birthday. It's
nice.
Batman Scoops podcast, actually. I think it's called More Noise. So if you head over to iTunes and listen to Noise, you'll listen to, if you're into rap music, I think.
I feel like you've got to shout that. More noise.
More noise, yeah.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Jam.
Yeah, exactly.
So happy birthday, Raj, on your 40th. Hope you're having a good one. Head over to find his Fat Man Scoops podcast wherever you can, because I know it'll make him smile. I think he's living the dream in Dubai, but I'm probably sweating in London more than he is out there.
Oh my God, it is so warm going in the shower now. Happy birthday, Raj.
There we go. Guys, stay safe as always. Keep washing your hands and what have you, social distancing. FPL as safely as you can. Other than that, ciao for now.
Be nice to each other. Play it your way. Good luck, everybody. Cue music, Manchild.